supposed to be on video.
It should be great for us to see who we are interacting with.
I'm on the road, but I will turn up my video once I get settled. I'm just on transit, but I'll put on my video.
That's okay. That's okay. Okanda, great to see you. All factors put into consideration, there's a very heavy downpour happening now, but this session will be recorded. It's also going on live. I think we are good to go. We can officially start off the program. I can see you nodding, so let me take that as a yes. So it's a great honor to have two of my panelists here. Please allow me to pass my sincere apologies from Mike Sagana. He has just gone in for a very critical meeting. We are hoping he'll be able to finish on time and join us because we were looking forward to engaging with his insights. But apologies, sincere apologies from him. He got an emergency engagement that has made him here with us right now as we commence. On behalf of Speak Up Africa, I am here hosting our webinar, and we truly want to appreciate each and everyone's presence with us here this evening because you have made time to just come and dive with us right into conversations that are critical and that matter, especially in our day and age today. And we shared the posters out. We basically want to have a very small conversation around the role of civic engagement in accountability and in leadership. Maybe if I can just put things into context, mid last year towards the end of the year, we had the Maandamano. The Gen Zs came out and said, we are fearless, we are leaderless, we want accountability. We are asking our leaders to come out, speak up, show us progress. And we've had a ripple effect in so many domains that cut across different spheres of now people chanting and wanting accountability. But after a bit of retrospect and a bit of research, I went back to where the genesis of the problem would be. And in one of the reports that I was reading, and this was a report by this was a report that came out from the COMESA Election Observation Mission. In Kenya only, we have about 75% of the population made up by the youth. But sadly to see and realize that only 39% of almost all these youths were registered voters and actually showed up to vote. And out of this 39%, you can actually say some were compromised in between. And therefore, that begs the question, are we part of the processes that are fundamental towards change that we need? And therefore, even as we come and say we want accountability and responsibility and transparency from our leaders, did we take part in actually electing them? And today I have youthful people, leaders, who have spoken in different spheres. For example, Okanda has spoken in our nation and even in international fronts, having a voice in conversations that really have steered change. And we are here today to just talk about this. And just to bring it into context is, civic education is a process where we are educating citizens of their rights, their responsibilities, and they identify the areas of political and governance processes that they can part in. And of course, as of any responsible entity, accountability plays a key role. And accountability in leadership encompasses actions that are taken to take full responsibility for the leader's actions. I believe that gives us a good context. Allow me to bring in Eugene Okanda to give a brief introduction of himself, and then we go to Nelly and we go straight to the questions that you have this evening. Okanda, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Please confirm you're able to hear me.
100%. Loud and clear.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I would have loved to be able to see the people who are in the call today, but I know possibly that will be made possible next time. But yeah, my name is Eugene Okanda. I am a Kenyan citizen who loves this country so passionately. I am an executive director of Okanda Leadership Academy. It's a corporate training and consultancy firm. So we run quite a number of leadership programs for corporate institutions. But also we run a program, and I also run an NGO that is called Unlock Young Leaders Summit, which is a youth-led NGO that has been offering training and platforms for mentorship for young people for the past 5 years, and we have done extensive work from high schools to universities, and also to with youth serving organizations. This thing we call civic education, I have done it extensively, quite in a number of counties, especially during the pre-election period of 2022. Which was quite insightful, and possibly we'll be sharing some of those insights in this conversation. I am also an author of 3 books now, 2 already published. 1 is in the pipeline, and then of course I'm looking forward to publish it very soon. 1 is on public speaking and communication. So I am passionate about public speaking, because when you get leaders to know how to speak up, some critical issues are able to be factored in. And the other one is on the pressure of being gifted. So it's just a message on what is a gift, how do you build it up, and how do you get it started, some of the pressure of what it calls to be gifted. And I'm also I also served as the Kenya United Nations Youth Representative for Kenya, and I happen to really get in platforms of conversation, speaking in Tanzania, in South Sudan, and also Ethiopia. But also we got an opportunity to represent the country at the 79th session of the United Nations General Assembly. So I just look forward to having a great conversation here. I'm a lover of people, especially young people, and I can't wait to see how this conversation goes. So thank you so much, Wendy.
Fantastic. That's quite an introduction, Eugene, and so much more has not been mentioned. I mean, if anyone follows me on social media, I think I'm very vocal about the work that you've done, and I'm really proud of you for being a voice of reason, a voice of change, and for the globe at large. Nelly, if you're with us, please take the floor and tell us who you are and what you're all about. Nelly.
Thank you, Wendy, for this opportunity, and to everyone who is listening to us. I'm honored to be speaking to you all this evening. My name is Nelly Chepkemoi Langat. I am a dedicated educationist. I am also a public policy consultant, in the same context, serving as a project facilitator with World Vision's project called Tumikia Mtoto. That's a USAID it's a USAID funded project that aims to enhance access to county-led quality, health and social services for orphans, vulnerable children, women, girls, and the youth. And aside from that, I serve as the policy and advocacy manager at a youth-led organization called We Care. And basically, my role at We Care involves empowering young people. And one of the things we do is is what we are doing here. We help empower and capacity build youths on how to engage themselves meaningfully and actively in governance as well as civic processes. Thank you so much. I'm honored to be here and looking forward to the discussion.
Great. Nelly, I come from way back with Nelly when we were still very, very young girls. We went to high school together, and it's an honor to have you right here, just growing and see you being a phenomenal woman who is engaging in conversations that bring a difference. And truly, we are honored to have you here. Without taking much more time, let me dive right into each of you. Given the role that you play as a policy and advocacy manager, right? How have you used your capacity to bring a change, especially in civic education around the youth?
Okay, thank you, Wendy. So just like I've started by saying and stating that my role as an advocacy and policy officer is basically my work centers on a lot of policy development It centers on a lot of civic engagement where we engage the public, and then it also centers on grassroots empowerment and mobilization. So by that, I mean we really get as close as it can get back at the ward level in communities. We operate within 3 counties. That's, in 4 counties: Siaya, Kisumu, Vihiga, partly Kakamega, and also Nairobi. That makes 5, sorry. So with this role, or rather with this kind of engagement at We Care, I have had to lead community-based initiatives. That's why I said we get to the ward level. So because for us, we are also a community-based organization, therefore we are rooted back at the communities where we operate from. So I've had to lead community initiatives and dialogues that bring together people from all walks of lives, people from the leadership spaces, and people from the citizenry, the populace, where we convene community dialogues. We host public discourses in higher institutions and high schools. And now we are trying to incorporate that into the primary schools by bringing in the conversation of children participation, because as much as we are talking about civic engagement, even constitutionally, it is acknowledged and recognized for all. So why we are doing this and bringing in children is because they do not need to be left behind. The Constitution recognizes them taking part in decision-making processes in the country. And so with that, we are trying to incorporate them through their learning institutions in schools. You've also asked me at my capacity, what else do we do in terms of this civic and sensitization of the youth? We try as a youth-led organization also to, as we are building capacity of the youth, we don't just do it like everybody else. So for us, we also have initiatives where we have youth-friendly policy awareness programs. For example, right now, we are having the budget process is ongoing, started late last year in August, and it's ongoing up to the end of June 30th. That's the end of a financial year, therefore also the beginning of a new budget process. So right now, for example, we are having the medium term debt management strategy by the government through Treasury of Kenya, and we are just coming from 2 weeks ago, the budget policy statement. All these 2 documents influence what is going to come in the Finance Bill 2025. So for us at We Care, or my role as an advocacy and policy officer here, we try and simplify all of this information to the fellow youth, because you and I know, the 3 of us might be actors in the policy space, so we might understand the policy language, but not everybody understands the policy language out here. So for us, we bridge that gap by simplifying the government structures. We bridge that gap by simplifying all this government information into a youth-friendly kind of data and information that can be easily accessed and understood by the public, as much as we are also targeting the youth, women, and persons living with disabilities. Another aspect is we do our work through strategic partnerships and policy advocacy. For example, our scope of work is within governance, education sector, climate, and justice. So we try and partner and, with organizations and individuals, as well as donors and development partners who share the same interest as us. And therefore, while aligning with that, you get to create a network of partners who then end up supporting you in your works through at the civic engagement activities. And with this, we've been able to see that there's been an increased awareness based on the data we have, or rather, since we started this project of civic engagement under our governance department, we've been able to reach to close to 3,000 youths in a span of 1 year. And we are hoping that by the end of the next 2 or 3 years, we shall have reached more than 10,000 youths and even reached out to more counties. Thank you.
Okanda, I can see you. You're still in the call. I hope I'm still audible.
Yes, you are.
Fantastic. Nelly, thank you so much for all the impactful work that you're doing, courtesy of the organization. But let me just hold that thought there and bring on board Okanda, if you can hear me. I just want to get your perspective in this regard, Okanda. I mean, leadership and governance is a backbone to setting the vision of a people. And you have created a base where you are passionate about cultivating leadership in young people and therefore grooming young leaders into the society. And we have seen there's been a gap between the leaders we elect into our offices and how they execute the mandate we give them. So what are the kind of things that we should be looking out in the leaders that we are putting into our office? I think I have lost Eugene. Let me just make a consultation. Do we still have Eugene on the line? We've lost him. Nelly, I think technicalities call for us to be prepared for anything. Let me just pick up that question with you, Nelly. And we regard and acknowledge all the works that you're doing with civic education. I think Okanda is back with us. Eugene, we lost you for a minute.
Sorry for that. I don't know what happened. Sorry for that.
Technical call for us to be prepared all the time. Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Fantastic. I had just asked Nelly to take a pause on that thought that we have. And I was coming right to you. And my approach is this, leadership and governance is the backbone to creating a vision for our people. And I have seen and witnessed and sat in the front row, seeing how passionate you are about creating spaces for young leaders, grooming leadership in people who can create voices of reason in different spheres. But Okanda, it begs the question, where is the disconnect between the leaders who are groomed to take up and occupy different spaces and offices and the leaders who actually get into those offices and execute the mandates? So what should we literally be looking out for in people we call leaders that we trust to execute these mandates?
Wow, that's a great question. It's a multifaceted question, if I can say. And one of the reality, in fact, when I was posting this post on my social, I actually highlighted a statement that any country's leadership and governance architecture is a reflection of the mindset of its citizens. Now, let me pause and say it slowly. That any country's governance and leadership architecture is a reflection of the mindset of its citizens. Now, we have to understand from the African perspective, the leadership we get, we deserve it. Because to a larger extent, it is the mindset of the majority of the citizen of that country. And it's a shocking statistic. That is really a shocking reality from where I stand. And it's the reason behind this is because we have seen, especially young people like myself coming up, and of course the Gen Zs who came up, and we saw people going to the streets demanding of a leadership they had envisioned but they had not entrusted. Because there's a leadership we envision and there's a leadership we entrust. And from where I sit, especially working with young people, you realize that we tend to think leadership can just happen. So any person we choose to get into the leadership position, they can be the leaders we want and the leaders we imagine they can be. So we said the few people who will go to the election will help us choose those leaders. So we relegated the responsibility until the rubber met the road and we were like, no, there's something that we need to do. So the agitation we were seeing on the street is a reflection of the wake-up call that our civic consciousness was restored by the results we were getting as citizens. Now, what should we look for, especially now that we have been given this reality? And I'm speaking this from the Kenyan perspective. As a citizen of this country, I am sure and I'm certain we should not be where we are as a nation. we don't deserve this, we don't deserve what we are being served, because at some point we thought God will do everything for us, and we really prayed. And of course, even the president said it, I was prayed into power. And that is a very interesting statement that is supposed to be subjected under analysis. But the truth is this, that there are things that you have been given the mandate to do by the Constitution. When you read the Constitution, I always have a Constitution with me. Thank you to Uraia for making sure that every person has a Constitution. And when you read chapter 1 of the Constitution, it talks about the sovereignty of the people and the supremacy of this Constitution. Now, when you read the very first statement on this article, it says that all sovereign power belongs to the people of Kenya, and it shall be exercised only in accordance with this Constitution. So what that means is that the leadership we have is a leadership that the citizens of the country have determined. What can we look for leaders? Maybe just to, because this conversation really normally gets me excited. Any person we put into leadership who has built nothing does not deserve a leadership position. And if you just want to do your genuine statistic, show me any person, especially the people we choose, who have built anything apart from the businesses that they do. Now, try to do sort of a comparison with a country like the US. Look at the cabinet that is being selected. Men and women who have built something. Like, you can literally see the thing that they have done. And of course, that is a wide range of comparison as far as that is concerned. But there are notes that we need to take. Leadership is such a huge responsibility that if you do not have a vision of building something, let me tell you, you'll be so disappointed. The other thing, in terms of what should we be looking, we should be looking for character. One of the sad statistics from the Kenyan perspective and from where I sit, we look at glamour. Glamour does not build a country. Noise does not build a country. In fact, leadership starts where the noise of politics stops. So if you want to think about a leadership of a country, think vision. What is the vision of this person? Let's stop this thing about the agenda that someone comes with and say, I have this agenda, and those agendas have been there since time immemorial. Let's look at, I have built this, and this is what I am supposed to do for this country. That is so important. The other thing that I will also say, that for me, and these are not traditional factors that people look at, but they're very central. So I've talked about vision and I've talked about character, because leadership needs character quotient to be sustained. But the third thing I will also talk about is someone who has a heart for people. Sadly, our leaders most of our leaders have turned out to be very heartless. They don't have concern for the people. Someone goes to complain about a medical system that does not work, and they're sent to the prison. I mean, that is so shocking. Even the devil, I think even the devil looks at some of the things that happen in this country and he gets shocked, because it's so sudden, it's so shocking. And for me, just a leader who has a heart for people will have a different mindset from what we are seeing and what we are being served with. But it starts with the citizens of the country. The citizens of the country, if there is any person who needs to change, especially from where I sit in this country, it is the citizens of this country. I am shocked when I see people dancing around politicians even before we go to a general election. I'm so shocked when people are taking selfies with politicians who have really made our lives so miserable. I'm so shocked, disappointed, and some of those people are young people. So I wonder. There's another young person who was on TV yesterday talking about things that I'm asking myself, who bewitched this one? And it's so shocking, because we are yet to get there as a country, if you ask me. Thank you.
Thank you, Eugene. And I mean, so much you have unpacked there. So much you have unpacked there. How we all go for the glamour. Let me bring Nelly in and ask Nelly this. From a report that was done by the COMESA Election Observation Mission report, we know as a nation the majority of our population is the youth. But to draw you back to the last general election, out of the about 75-76% of the youth who are in this nation, only 39.8% of them actually went and became registered voters who showed up at the ballot boxes. Now, Nelly, let me ask you this. what could have influenced the low voter turnout during our last election? Because Okanda says clearly we do not really have the right priorities when we are looking at the people who we want to bring to office, which means we do not take part of the processes that lead us to choosing these leaders. And then when they're in the offices, we want to come out and ask for accountability. And Okanda, I wanted to tell you that's why we are having such fundamental conversations, because we want to ask, how can we right our wrongs? So Nelly, we had a very low voter turnout. Right now we are trying to do a civic education, but Nelly, what really could be the problem that the youth who are a majority of this nation do not turn up to choose leaders and be part of the process, Nelly?
Thank you, Wendy. I'm going to start from where Eugene left, and partly we are to blame for, we the voters, we are to blame ourselves. And also, I wouldn't also want to blame them fully, like just as a percentage, because sometimes, as much as they elect the people Eugene was talking about, some elect them from an informed perspective or from an informed context. And when we are seeing at the informed context and even why we are doing this, and you've said that what needs to be done, before I even give my insights, I think whatever you're already doing with us here is what needs to be done. Conversations need to be held, dialogues need to be held. And one of the things that need to be done is what we are doing here. Once we are able to convene together as youths, as women, as the marginalized populace, as the general public, the citizenry, the leaders, the community members, then once the conversations start, that is the beginning of solving the problem. So back to your question with my insights. I think for me now, because you brought the angle of general elections, and before I even give the challenges, or rather what really leads to this voter apathy amongst the youth, is, you see, the reason why we emphasize on the need for civic engagement is because of our constitution. And I'm glad Eugene brought out that point. Partly, or rather what for me I normally emphasize to people, is you need to take note of 3 specific articles in the constitution if you really want to get to understand this electoral, legislative, and the civic engagement processes. Number 1 is the article that Eugene was talking about, Article 1, that sovereignty, all power belongs to the people. That was literally our guiding mantra during the demonstrations. Number 2 is the Article 38. Article 38 speaks of the political rights of every citizen, including the youths who are listening to us here and who may not be part of this conversation. And lastly, Article 81. Article 81 talks of the electoral systems and representation processes in the country. So now bringing in the angle of the elections of 2022 that you just mentioned, if many youths, or rather many people in the populace, were able to take note of the 3 mentioned articles I've just mentioned, then it would really have an impact as to how they elect our leaders. Because as I was starting to say, I said I would blame the citizenry, and I will also not blame them, because this might have also happened from the point of information not reaching out to them. How many people, or how many young people who just acquired their ID are even aware on what to vote or who to vote for? Or let's not even get there. What is the process of, the electoral process? That's why I'm saying partly we blame ourselves as the citizens, and we also blame, the lack of knowledge and information about this. So number 1 of the issues that really bring me to speaking about the youth apathy in the previous elections was because of the, there's that civic awareness was lacking. There has been a gap, honestly, and that gap was maximized, or rather brought out to limelight during the Gen Z protests, where everyone had enough of everything, and no one could let anybody legislate their livelihoods out of existence, because it was that lack of awareness that bills were being passed in parliament, policies were being made, laws were being made in the country, and decisions were being made in the country with disregard to what the people had to say. Ideally, Eugene has explained to us this evening that it is the people who mandate, or rather who take the mandate and give the leaders we choose to represent our ideals and ideas. So if at all they are to decide on anything for us, we have to have a stand or a sound on it, a voice on it. So when that happens without regarding or going back to the people, then that rules out the whole electoral process as to why the youth should elect people. So I think one of the reasons here is because of that lack of awareness.
Nelly, just hold on to that thought and I ask you this, right? We are taking up spaces and doing civic education, right? But we can even sit down and do a post-mortem. For example, the statistics we'll have gathered from such a webinar, right? And the gap widening between the source of information and the people consuming this information. I just want to bring out another angle to you for you to dissect. Is it that the young people of this nation have misplaced priorities, that they are seeking knowledge, information, for example, in the glamour that Okanda was talking about, and they fail to talk and take part in conversations that really matter? Because just before the Gen Z protest, it was assumed that people of these constitutions, laws, and all that guides our governance in this nation. So this is the angle I want to bring to you. Do you also think there is a level of negligence that young people have, that they do not really care to get to the source of information, and that enhances the gap and keeps widening the gap from the source of information to the consumers of this information, Nelly?
Okay, thank you, Wendy. So partly, was that my question or Okanda's? Hello?
Nelly, take it.
Okay. So for me, maybe back then we might say they may have lacked an interest, or there was that lack of information.
Yes, yours. I was just picking it up because you had mentioned there was a lack of awareness. We do not maximize, and the keeps still on the call. You're on mute.
Sorry. Thank you, Wendy. Am I audible?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear. Proceed.
So you've brought up a very important thing. I really dislike when people say that the youth had for a long time not had an interest. I think many youths have just had an interest in these governance issues, but the language and the way this information is brought to them is just not welcoming to them. But it has always been how well is the information packaged to them, because you cannot come up with the whole policies and documents of like over 500 pages and be expected to like be attractive to the youth. They won't read it. So if only we could leverage on the technology that is readily available to us at this generation or at this era, then information will be reaching out to many people. And why I like whatever arising is happening right now with the civic engagement amongst the youth is because they are leveraging on technology. Technology is really a lifesaver, because even for us actors in the policy space, we are leveraging on the same technology to kind of try and simplify all this data and information. And where I'm also faulting the system is because why do we wait for elections to start engaging the youth on such matters? Should these conversations be onward? I mean, they should be sustainable. Like we're having this, we should be having conversations and civic education pre-election, during election, and even after elections. What happens then? Then that makes it easier for the young people to, engage themselves in this. And why there's that gap also is because I would bring it back to the education system in our country. While we start engaging the youths from the age of 18, what are we really doing to the younger children? Do we need to wait for them to get to 18 years so that they should now start engaging in the civic engagement? Can we now all start imagining of the difference we would have made as a society, as a country, if we could start engaging the civic education with the children, so that once they get to the legal age of voting and engaging themselves in these electoral processes, then they're already aware, their mindsets are already made up and well equipped to know the differences. So partly for me, the angle you're bringing out about information is because of how much often are the youth engaged. It's not that they are not interested in this, they're just interested, but how well is this information packaged to them to be attractive and for them to engage in? Because, and also how well are these processes simplified for the same youth? So the other aspect is, I'm going to talk about a challenge still, another challenge is the challenge of corruption. When you have a right, when you know you have a duty to vote and elect leaders in an election, and the people we elect are of questionable character, then it brings up the issue of apathy. You make the youth lose hope in leadership, because why would they elect corrupt individuals to get to offices to squander them dry? Another issue is the high cost of living. When you tell someone that this is someone who has no job, who has no money, who has nothing to feed or, you know, to put on their table, and you require them to go line up during an election process, that is where now also our leaders manipulate the citizenry, because they take advantage of the high cost of living and unemployment rate amongst the youth. So they end up using them during the election campaign time, you know, in terms of violence, in terms of manipulating the votes by buying them votes. That's the corruption. Then people end up electing people who are not meant to be in leadership spaces. And this starts from the political parties. Another aspect is I'm going to bring in the angle of political parties, because for me, I believe in this country, in the electoral process, political parties basically form the basis of an election in this country. If an election is to happen, the politics and elections starts from the political parties to get the candidates. But what happens in our political parties, you rule out the youths, you don't involve the youths, you just have a youth league by name, but no much of an influence and impact when it comes to decision making in the political parties. So many times you end up losing the youth voice and youth participation in these political parties. And then this translates to the national politics and the devolved politics as well. So you end up rolling them and making them more marginalized. So therefore they feel left out, and they will not see the need to therefore participate. And I want to believe that's some of the reasons that, you know, contributed to the apathy of the youth failing. And I'm hoping that as we head to the next elections, with this kind of awakening, we should be able to have more youths taking up these leadership spaces and even taking part in the next election. Thank you.
Right, Nelly. Eugene, let me bring you in on the same question, but just to shed a different light and bring a different point of view. Having dealt with quite a number of youth from different spheres of life and walks of life, right? You're very passionate about self-growth and self-responsibility, for example, with the programs that you have coming up. So Eugene, is there a gap between the quest for knowledge between the young people and the source of this knowledge, or what could actually be the problem? Because it seems that there's a disconnect. I love how Nelly brings it out and says, you can actually not come up with a 5,000 pager and expect this generation to sit down and read. So following you and the methodologies that you're using, Eugene, is it that young people are just disinterested in matters that truly affect and shape the core of who they are and have a ripple effect in governance, leadership, and all? So not politically inclined, though, you deal with us in different shapes and forms. What could be the disconnect?
I think it boils down to mindset. Mindset is such a powerful aspect of a human being, because in fact, as the adage goes, that all battles are won and lost in the mind. Now, Jim Rohn puts a statement in a very interesting statement, and he says that if you take all the money in the world and distribute that money equally to everyone, and you give it a period of time, that money will go back to the same pockets. Now, let me pause and say it slowly. When you take all the money in the world and you distribute the money equally, the money will go back to the same pockets, because money and value follows a mindset, a particular mindset. Okay, I will say this. There's this coming up, there's a generation that is coming up that their mindset is different. The way they think, the way they action things, and the way they're able to speak about things they believe is totally different. And there's a mindset shift, even when you look at political interplay where young people are getting involved in terms of leadership and governance. You can see young people are coming up and they're really understanding that, hey, we are the ones holding the yardstick of accountability. So what I will say is this: we need to still do the work, because in fact, as someone was pulling the joke and he was saying, the youth of Nairobi are the Gen Zs. The joke was going this way. All young people in Nairobi are called youth. The rest are called youth. So I don't know what that really meant. But what we're totally saying here is that there's a lot of work that needs to go on. And if there is someone who is listening to me and they would love to really invest in young people, is to transform the mindset of young people. Help them to leverage the skill set that they have gotten in school, because one of the things about our education system is that it is giving out or spitting out graduates, and you find that there's so little that most of these graduates are able to do. There's a difference between going to school and going through school. The people who go to school and the people who go through the school. The people who go to school, they're able to capitalize on what they have been taught in a classroom, and they're able to be so street smart that they're able to put into practice what they have studied in school. Some of them are rising up to be consultants, some of them are becoming marketers, and there's quite a lot that is going on. But organizations, institutions need to keep on pushing knowledge formatting that it's able to work for the benefit of the people. Now, the issue about knowledge is that everybody is knowledgeable in their own right. The question is, what are you doing about the knowledge that you have in terms of transforming your community? And you can always build systems around your knowledge. If you have knowledge and you don't have systems, your knowledge will fall through your hands. And it's so important. Systems are the things that are able to sustain the knowledge through practical solutions that are able to be seen as far as solving community problems are concerned. So I think that's what I will say concerning that question. But even as I double click on a very important response that Nelly has been able to put across, we need to really ask ourselves, how does this political knowledge translate into political action? Who is holding the accountability yardstick as far as leadership and accountability is concerned? Are our citizens empowered enough to be able to say no to 50 shillings? And now look here, you don't solve an accountability question if you have not solved an economic question. The reason, and you realize that this is a psychological play that goes around, especially in countries that are still in poverty. When someone wants to get to overpower you, they make you so poor that you cannot have the liberty of making the right decision. And until we are able to solve the economic problem, the accountability problem will just hang in the air, because people are not empowered enough. Because if right now you pass through a street and you're able to just give people 50 shillings for them to push a particular agenda, goodness, people will do that because people are economically dry. So until we solve the economic problem, the accountability problem might also be overhatched. But what I'm just saying in a nutshell is that accountability is multifaceted. You cannot just train people to be. You cannot just say you are pushing civic education and people do not know how to survive. So because if you educate me to be in terms of my civic duty, and I cannot put food on the table, then the information I have, the knowledge I have, it's so hard for me to put it into practice. And that's why it calls for multi-stakeholder approach concerning this issue of civic education. It cannot just be knowledge-based. It should also be practical solutions that are able to get people out of poverty. because the only thing that spoon feeding does is that it increases the size of the spoon. So you need to help people to understand that it is not just being spoon fed. It's about how do you practically put into reality the knowledge that you have as a citizen. I think that's what I'll say concerning that. Thank you.
Great. I mean, I am here to moderate, but I'm jotting down pointers, and I mean, it's even shocking that time has really passed by. But Nelly said a very fundamental thing, that it's important that we are already having such conversations, because it should not take for us to have such conversations towards elections, but this should be a norm, that even as we face out kids who are coming from the system and going right to the world, we should put the baton back to them. And even as we wind up, I just want to ask Nelly and Okanda, there's been an approach that we have previously used that has been full of violence and demand and command when we are asking for accountability. Which are the measures that we can put to place that can have order as we seek accountability and transparency from our leaders? So as we wind up the conversation, heading to the peak of the hour, Nelly, Okanda, what are some of the measures that we can put in play that will ask for accountability from the people we have put in office? And for me, I mean, leadership goes way beyond political spaces, but governance and systems take for all these multifaceted spaces to come together and unite for us to have a united front. So what are the ways and measures that we can use to ask for accountability from the people we call our leaders? Nelly.
Thank you, Wendy. So I'm very passionate about education, and even as an educationist myself. By that, I just mean I'm a teacher of music and Kiswahili by profession. So starting on that education point, I think we would need a legislative angle on the education sector, if you asked me. And why I'm saying so is because of the point I had made about the kids that are in secondary, primary school. Because for us as a country, we start engaging people when they're 18 years old, when they get to the youth aspect, and we leave out these children. And you remember the Constitution recognizes them as well. So if you're going to make decisions for them, even in the education sector, they need to be involved. CBC, you're making decisions for them, but you don't involve them and know what the kids want, what the kids prefer, but you want to make decisions for them. So why I'm stating there, why I mentioned this, and this needs a legislative angle. We have the Basic Education Act in Kenya, and I think with the legislative angle that I'm talking about is we may need to amend it through parliament, of course, through our representatives, the members of parliament. They are the legislative people, they make the laws in the country. So if at all they're going to amend, they should be the ones to amend this. So I'm proposing an amendment to the Basic Education Act through parliament that, you know, civic education should be made and included in the curriculum if we are going to have to involve kids, because not everyone will be able to, again, because some of these activities need resources and you cannot have the resources to reach everybody as a civil society. But the government is mandated, it budgets for the whole country. So if budgeting, they have a budget for a whole education sector. I feel that this Education Act, the Basic Education Act, because that's the one that tackles primary and secondary level learners. So they should be able to amend this act to include this kind of civic engagement and education right from pale chini shule ya chekechea, because if you are able to have this in our curriculum, then the mindsets of our learners start changing from very young age, so that by the time they're getting to the legal age of 18, they are very aware of what leadership matters. These children practice accountability in schools. They have teachers, parents, and even their prefects in classes. They hold all these groups accountable. So if you imagine if these children can be made aware about the civic engagement, then they'll be able to have an impact when it comes to influencing policies and decisions nationally and even county-wise, because as we stand in this country, we have two levels of governance. Secondly, moving now to the practical aspect, is we take these conversations back to the ward level, back to the communities. If we can be able to have, community dialogues, for example, the ones we are hosting, we host community dialogues in a span of intervals every month or after every 2 months. So why we do this is because when you have sustained dialogues in the community back then, I come from a Maasai community, and I can attest to you, it's hard when it comes to this civic engagement, because you have all the other cross-cutting challenges despite coming from an already marginalized community that is the Maasai. So you have all other cross-cutting issues that you can all think about. So if you can able to take all these dialogues back to the communities there and sustain them, just like I've said, don't wait to some few months before elections. Have the conversations running right now throughout to 2027, during the elections, and even after. Then they'll be able to follow these processes and know how they follow each other. Then they can also be able to know at what point do we come in for the accountability aspect. Because you remember when we started this conversation, we started by saying there's a lack of some of us, or a majority of the populace, not taking part in these processes. For example, if I may state the Finance Bill 2025 that is soon coming up, because I said we're in the budget process period, very loud, noisy, and quite a violent arena, or time when it's very noisy, because people are fighting for resources. It's budget time, money. Where there's money, there's talks and there's fights. So that's why you see 1 man, 1 shilling vote being in the discussions out here, because everybody wants whatever is enough or more for their people. So when we have such conversations back at the grassroots level, the mindsets of the citizens begin to change, and they're also aware of the processes, because these people, the youth, because we were talking about the youth, before they get, for example, to start talking about the Finance Bill 2025, they would have known that this budget policy statement that just ended last week and is heading to Parliament before 15th is going to influence that. The medium-term debt management strategy in the country that is happening right now by the Treasury is closing tomorrow, is the deadline for public comments. You'll be able to know all these are influencing the the Finance Bill of 2025. So we have youths who are already engaging in this process. When that time comes for Finance Bill 2025, whatever will be in the Finance Bill is what is at the 2 documents that I've just mentioned. So if you're able to take part in this process, then you will know by the time Finance Bill comes back, you will know what was in these documents that the government has decided to leave out, because you would have taken part in the process. Another very key thing that Eugene mentioned, we need to take part in these processes, and because that's the only way you can know, you can be able to influence changes and decisions, and you can also be able to make the people of authority accountable, because you make them accountable by knowing their mandates, knowing their works and work plans, and what kind of info you know about the processes. Lastly, as I finish, is to promote inclusion, inclusiveness, and also gender responsiveness. I want to bring in the aspect of gender, because I know it's something that's being mentioned very much, but also there's the aspect of misinformation. Many people really, even those in government, I can attest to this, many people do not understand the importance of the 2/3 gender rule. When you talk about that, people just see women. But it's not really about women. It's more of all genders, but it's such talk about more women, because in the country, it is the women that have been marginalized. So more emphasis needs to be put on the marginalization of the special interest group. I mean, the Constitution already recognizes them as marginalized already. That is the youth, women, and persons with disabilities. I always like bringing in the children as a marginalized group as well, because many times they're left out of many decisions in terms of governance and development. So there's still marginalization happening, and why we need to fight this is we need to promote inclusiveness and gender responsiveness. For example, in the advocacy space, we need to push for policies ensuring that government budgets or any other decision address the needs of these persons living with disabilities, women, and even the youth. And bringing it practically to, as an example, is you look at the composition of our leadership in the country, you are told you will nominate 1 or 2 people to represent persons with disability. You will nominate 1 or 2 youths to represent all the youths in the in the country. How do these 2 people bring about the whole conversations to the floor of the House about 75% of the national populace, but you still have only 2 people representing this populace? It doesn't make sense, because it communicates that's marginalization. You are the most with the populace, but very less when it comes to representation. So I think that's an angle we need to push. Thank you.
All right, Eugene, I think as we wind up, we are slowly going past the time we had set. How do we call our leaders into accountability, Eugene?
I want to echo what Nelly has projected and submitted. It should be put under serious consideration, because those are the very key, fundamental, practical ways to making sure that we hold our leaders accountable. I'll mention 2 things that I also don't think the traditional way of looking how accountability should work and look like. Number 1, we should always ask ourselves the question, who is holding the accountability yardstick? Do they have the moral authority to hold our leaders accountable? And when you look at the factors that are holding the accountability yardstick, it starts from the citizens. So are the citizens, do the citizens have the moral authority to hold their leaders accountable? Number 2, the Constitution. Chapter 6 of the Constitution talks about leadership and talks about some of those facets that we should look in a leader when we are picking a leader. So if those things are not, if we don't pick leaders and if we don't hold leaders accountable based on chapter 6 of the Constitution, we therefore fall short. Number 3 is institutional frameworks. So there are various institutional frameworks that should also play the key role of accountability. Civil society organizations that have come out so loudly in terms of holding our leaders accountable. The other thing is youth serving organization. The youth of this country have continued to galvanize efforts towards making sure that leadership and accountability is something that is alive and well. The other is business community. The business community have to be upfront. I was following closely the election season of the United States, and you'll see a president being called for meetings, even with business community. They want to know, what are you going to do about the business community? And therefore, by them doing that, they're able to hold the leader accountable in that regard. The other is professional bodies. Professional bodies in this country need to continuously wake up and make sure that not just writing statements, which is very important and it has played a role to some way, but making sure that they are on the road. When, like, I was so sad, I remember during the Gen Z protests, and of course, I know quite a number of people who are really trying to speak on social media, which is very good. But you see, a tweet can only do as much. It's until we go to the road and all of us, we galvanize our efforts. Religious institutions that have been put under serious scrutiny, we need to continue. These are the fundamental institutions that should continuously hold the accountability yardstick. But the second thing that I wanted to say quickly, we need to commit ourselves to raising a clone of young people who are patriotic and they continuously have a vision for this country. Now, there's an old adage that goes, you cannot teach an old dog new tricks. Now, that might sound a bit off in terms of what I want to say. And let me just put it clear. I'm not calling anyone a dog. It's just a statement that I want to use specifically to pass a statement. We need to go back to primary schools and teach young people what accountability looks like. We need to go back to universities, to high schools, and teach young people what accountability looks like. We need to raise up a group, a generation of young people who understand when you talk about accountability, how does it look like, so that it does not sound like a strange, stale term that does not have impact in our world. And I think for me, that should also be very, very key. And just to double click on what Nelly said about civic education. Civic education should be continuous. It's so sad that most organizations wake up to do civic education 2 weeks to the election. That is too late. It's too late. Like some organizations need to commit to be doing civic education continuously. It has to be a continuous work. What Nelly together with the team are doing in terms of budgeting and budget processes. It should be a continuous process so that we don't wake up one morning and we are trying to change a heart that is so hard that cannot even listen to what you want to say. But all in all, I believe, and I continuously believe, it's interesting that more than 15 million citizens of this country are between the age of 18 and 35. That is not just a number, that is a statement, and it should be a statement of action, not just a statistical reality. I thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Nelly and Eugene. We are really pressed for time, but I mean, what impactful conversations we have had. And this is just the tip of the iceberg that we have tried to unpack today. So many more conversations need to be had. So many more audiences need to be reached out to. So many platforms need to come out to be able to just come and be part of these conversations and this movement if we want to see change in this nation. Nelly and Eugene, in 1 minute each, please tell people how we can reach out to you, your social media platforms, what you have planned up for them. We definitely are hoping to have more partnerships with you to have such engaging and transformative conversations. Nelly and Eugene, please give us our parting shots as we wind up the conversation this evening, and then we will have it as a wrap. Nelly, your social medias, where can we find you?
Thank you. Well, I'm more active on LinkedIn and X, where we keep the social accountability conversations going apart from the physical ones. So I use my name, Nelly Chepkemoi, on all social media platforms. And my parting shot for this evening is to just let us know that civic engagement for us as a citizenry is not a privilege. It is more of a constitutional right and a democratic obligation for us all. So already recognizing that we are already marginalized, and by these I mean the youth, women, and persons living with disabilities, and even children, we must move beyond awareness to action. And we must not let our livelihoods be legislated out of existence. And we need to take a collective effort, just like Eugene mentioned. It needs a multi-sectoral approach. So we need to collectively come together and bridge the civic education gap and demand for a leadership that is ethical, transparent, and accountable. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you, Nelly. Okanda.
All right, thank you so much. Thank you as well for having me on this deck. You guys, please make sure we connect more on social media. Just search Okanda S. Eugene across all social media platforms on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Twitter, on what else? What is the other one? On Instagram and also on TikTok. Yeah, I keep conversations going. I train people on various soft skills. And it will be an honor just to connect with you. Like this weekend, we have we have a vision board masterclass. We'll be training people on how do you create a vision board, how does it work, and also just helping them to join a community of accountability, because accountability starts with yourself first before it goes to the government. If you don't know how to hold yourself accountable for your goals, for the actions that you want to put, then forget about it. But my parting shot will be this. And it's the words of Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee, for those who know Bruce Lee said that I do not fear a man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear a man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times. And what that means is that if we galvanize our efforts and we maintain consistent, relevant, and up to date, we are able to transform the agenda of this country. And for every young person listening to me, listen, the power is in your hands. Please make sure that you continue to be vocal about the things that are of concern, and making sure that your voice, your vote continues to count, because we are the ones holding the accountability yardstick. 15 million, more than 15 million young people is not just a statistic, but it's a reality that can bring transformation. I thank you very much. I look forward to connecting with you more. Asante.
Fantastic. That is all we had for us this evening. Nelly Chepkemoi, Policy and Advocacy Manager, We Care. We have Okanda Eugene, who is a global author, moderator, speaker, and CEO of Okanda Leadership Academy. We have been honored by your presence, just gracing us here and having these impactful conversations. I mean, what Nelly said, what Eugene, you have echoed out, we need to have more of these conversations. On behalf of my team at Speak Up, we say Asante Sana. We are very grateful and thankful for everyone who has managed to spare some time and join us this evening for these conversations. Please keep it at Speak Up for this and many more conversations. I have been your host and moderator for this evening, Wendy Lois. From me and my team, Asante Sana, Jioni Njema, and God bless you. Asante.
Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Wendy. Bye-bye.